podcast. Here I am, Shane, with my co-host, Logan. Say hi to the people, Logan.
What's going on?
Yeah, so we're here to talk about MMA and combat sports and all the drama involved. No ads, no talk of cutting your grass or your comedy shows. Just a couple guys enjoying some brewskis, talk about fighting. All right. So, did you enjoy any of the fights this weekend, Logan? Did you miss them?
I did miss him this weekend.
Yeah, I missed them too. I went back and watched some of the UFC Sao Paulo card and enjoyed a couple of those, and we'll get to that a little bit later. First up, we can start out with the news. And I think one of the biggest pieces of news to come out this week, Jon Jones is free to fight in October, which frees him up to fight potentially what people are saying on the UFC 230 card in November at Madison Square Garden. Headlining that card because that card has yet to have a main event. People are saying Jones, other people are saying who's he going to fight? Is it Cormier? Is it Gustafsson? Who could you bring him back against? Is it at 205? Is it at 205? Is it at heavyweight? What do you do? Dana White denies it. He says Jones isn't even in shape. However, we've seen video on his Instagram of him training his striking.
Oh, yeah.
Whether or not that means he's in fight shape, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, he's not fighting Cormier. That's for sure. Because he's trying to get a money fight.
That's what Cormier says. That's what Cormier says. He says he's fighting Brock.
Yeah.
And Cormier is not going to risk that fight. He also says he is retiring in March when he turns the age of 40. Dana White has said he doubts those claims because Cormier is a competitor, but I kind of believe him.
Well, I think that obviously stems from how much money he's going to make his next fight.
He's going to make so much money.
Well, who knows?
I mean, that's the thing, too, is...
Okay, so everybody at this point knows that Brock is more of a showman than he is an athlete at this point, especially since the antics after the Stipe knockout.
But he is a competitor.
Yeah, but you got to think of his record as well. But his record, though.
Well, he hasn't actually had that many fights, but the record he has is pretty impressive. I mean, he beat Shane Carwin in his prime. Two guys that beat him are Uberim and Cain Velasquez.
The most money that he can earn in a fight would be another fight with Jon Jones at heavyweight.
Brock, you mean? Or
No.
DC?
DC. DC would make more money fighting Jon Jones at heavyweight than he would with Brock.
Who do you think wins that fight?
Well, at heavyweight is a different story, but...
We don't know. DC has, as DC's shown us, he has Mark Hunt power and, Daniel Cormier wrestling at heavyweight.
Yeah, but
the power that
Jon Jones.
Jon Jones comes with... Yeah, but, you know...
Well, and we
they're
haven't
going to have
seen
an eye on him. He's not going to be able to stick as many needles in his ass and, you know...
Oh, exactly.
So, I don't know. That's an interesting contest.
It's a tough one.
I honestly was a fan of the Yoel Romero main event. The main event Yoel Romero offered back in, I forget, I think it was July, that they fight at UFC 230 in the main event at 205. Because Cormier said he's going to come back down and defend his 205-pound title, yet there's no evidence of that. And you got to remember, if he's going to defend that title, he probably has to do it before the Brock Lesnar fight. Because the Brock is not free to fight until January at the earliest. I liked that fight, and in fact, that relates to another piece of news that we can get to involving another fight that's been announced.
But how good would that fight be, though, between Yoel and Jon Jones?
I think it's a less entertaining fight. I think Jon Jones would do a better job at neutralizing the explosivity of a Yoel Romero. And I think DC versus Yoel, though, they're playing the same game. Except Yoel also has explosive power. How much more powerful is he at 205?
Oh, yeah.
I honestly think it's weird that he didn't make weight for his 185-pound title fight. He's not the biggest middleweight. He's a large middleweight.
Oh, he's pretty jacked, though.
He's jacked, but but he can certainly make that weight. I mean, it's not a tremendous cut for him, I'd imagine. He's only 5'10".
Mm-hmm.
So he's Woodley's height. Woodley makes it down to 170. They're both super jacked. I don't know what Romero sits at in the offseason, but guys like Bisping said he sat at 225 sometimes in the offseason.
Yeah, but I would think that since Bisping's cardio is higher, that he'd probably have more cardio into his training than somebody like Yoel would.
I don't understand it. I can understand intentionally missing weight for the Rockhold fight if you take it on late notice or even accidentally missing that weight. But for your middleweight title bout, it must be hard for him to make weight. Otherwise, but I'd actually like to see Romero at 205. I think that division is about to make a resurgence, and for the past couple of years, it's just been super stagnant. It's been absent of Jones. DC is clearly the biggest talent there. I mean, you have a few prospects in Volkan Ozdemir. You have a few prospects in Alexander Gustafsson, but DC's beat them both.
Volkan is way overrated, in my opinion.
Why?
I don't know.
He flatlined Manawa.
Yeah, but
you're a huge Manawa fan.
But Manawa is not in the top 5.
It's true. Manawa is just an athletic talent.
Yeah.
He said so himself. He's not the most technical guy, but he comes to stand and bang, and he brings a lot of power.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was a weightlifter who got into MMA at I forget what it was, something crazy, like 28 or 30 or something like a Travis Brown story. So I agree, but
I think Gustafsson needs another shot.
I agree. DC said he's not going to give it to him because
DC's a fucking.
I'd like to see.
He's a child.
Here's the thing. For the interim title, I think what's going to happen is they're going to do an interim title, and I think that should be between Gustafsson and the winner of Anthony Smith versus Volkan Ozdemir. And what's going to happen, in my opinion, is DC's probably not going to return to light heavyweight. I don't know that he even knows that he's not going to return to light heavyweight, but I don't think he is. I think he has in his head he is, but I don't think he is. I think you're going to see that interim championship take place, and then, like with Whitaker, when that champion retires, when DC retires, they're going to automatically become the new champion. Kind of like what happened with Robert Whitaker at middleweight. When GSP resigned from the belt, he released the middleweight title after beating Michael Bisping.
Yeah, I just don't see anybody at light heavyweight that's going to offer that same revenue that DC's looking for a fight.
I mean, what's the beat, John? But I think that fight, it can't happen at light heavyweight again. Yeah. Something's got to change. An element has to change to make people interested. Because it's like we've seen you fight him twice at light heavyweight.
Because at that point, how much would that be? $180 they spent watching the same fight?
But yeah, essentially. And the thing is, if it ends with DC getting knocked out again, the thing is, what's changed is DC has actually started to get the recognition that he deserves.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I don't want to watch Cody versus TJ a third time.
Me neither. I'd like to see. That's
soon.
The thing. I'd like to see Cody versus John Lineker versus Jimmy Rivera.
It's the same thing in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to see DC lose 3 times in a row.
Right.
I mean, unless John Jones is clean, but I mean, the last time we saw him clean.
That's the thing. Another thing, USADA, as I understand it, it is an automatic 2-year suspension on your second violation. However, they've given him a 15-month suspension. So is USADA suspect? That's what some people are saying.
I mean, to an extent. At some point, Dana White's looking at it and he's like, well, okay, these are our rules, but we're hindering ourselves. You know what I mean? He's got to be thinking that. Because
he's got to be counting down the days until that USADA contract.
Would you rather have
TRT Vitor would still be in the game.
2 main cards a year that bring you $100 million, but, you have some allegations and failed drug tests, or would you rather have just a steady stream of small income?
Well, that also has to do with the current pay-per-view model and the fact that they do one every month. I like it because I'm an avid consumer. I consume a lot of their product. However, the casual fan wants to watch the big fights. He wants to watch the Conor versus Khabib. He wants to watch the John Jones versus Brock Lesnar potential fight. Those are the fights he wants to watch. I'll watch anything. So the marketing doesn't matter as much for me.
I mean, it does with me to the point where I'm just tired of seeing interim fights for belts.
I'm tired of seeing interim fights where the interim champion is later stripped because he won't take
Like Colby Covington.
a fight in the interim. Exactly.
The GOAT of his division.
Colby destroyed Dos Anjos,
who I believed humiliated him.
Who I believed was going to beat Colby, because
who didn't think that?
Well, I mean, Colby hadn't demonstrated much up until that point. He won a 3-round decision against Damian Maia, which was extremely impressive. I mean, he beat the brakes off Damian Maia, but Damian Maia has a problem with high-level wrestlers. So to see him against a striker like Dos Anjos and outboxing him because he was outpacing him, it was almost like watching Nick Diaz.
Mm-hmm.
It was very interesting. And yeah, but as to our point, I was disappointed to hear that he was supposedly stripped. Although stripped, it doesn't matter. If he's getting the next shot against Woodley, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but do you think he is though?
I think so. I think that's just a fight to make. I think
so. How long do you think Tyron is going to try and run from that fight?
I think Tyron wants that fight.
I don't think he does, man.
You don't think so? I think it's an interesting clash of styles, and styles make fighters. It's a pressure and it's a pace that Colby puts on guys, and it's a high-level wrestler with some boxing versus a high-level wrestler with some boxing who fights off explosivity and power. And it's extremely hard to pressure a guy who can knock you out with one punch like Tyron. Especially, the thing is Colby's fallback thing from his boxing is taking you down. So you're constantly fearing the takedown, and while you're fearing getting taken down, you're getting pummeled with shots. Tyron's not going to be afraid of Colby's takedown.
So I think the fight by itself is great, but I'm speaking more of the business standpoint. I think that everybody liked Conor. Everybody loves Conor as a competitor and as a fighter and as a trash talker. But what they've done is basically allow champions to be divas and pick when they want to fight, where they want to fight. And then we have these long stretches of time where the belts aren't contested and you're hurting younger guys that are hungry, that want to get in there. Mm-hmm. So nobody wants to join a sport where you have to wait 5 years for a title shot. You know what I'm saying? If you have the talent, who wants to wait that long? And then even then, most people that get the titles lose their titles in the first, I would say, 6 months to a year.
That's the thing. And that's another thing we can get to with that press conference, which we will talk about later. The next bit of news, Mark Hunt versus Gokhan Saki is a rumored fight after Mark Hunt lost his last fight to Alexei Olenek, which is just a shame to watch, because the thing is that's a fight he's supposed to win. I mean, we know Mark Hunt doesn't have much of a ground game, and that's Olenek's specialty. But Olenek gets hit with shots easily. He stands, and he doesn't have the best takedowns.
It's just sad, man.
And Mark Hunt actually he's good at getting back up off the ground most of the time.
Well, so it's a fighter past his prime. I mean,
that's what it is. You're seeing it with Overeem too, a little bit, I think.
Yeah, well, Overeem can still compete at multiple angles. Now Mark Hunt's older. With the takedowns and the submissions, personally to me, the last 2 fights that I've seen of him, it doesn't look like he's trying submissive-wise.
No, it's kind of like watching a K. I mean, it is what it is. Mark Hunt is a old school guy from the K1 days. He fought in Pride.
Just wants to stand and bang.
He just wants to stand and bang.
And it's not a stand and bang world no more.
The game has evolved. If people know you're there to stand and bang,
they're gonna wrestle fuck you.
They're practicing to wrestle fuck you,
especially if they know. Fuck the shit out of you.
Especially if they know that you're a Samoan rhino and you're gonna knock them out with one shot. They know they can't stand there and bang in the pocket with you.
What about Ty?
What about Ty?
He's young. He's kind of filling that demographic footsteps of
I
Mark
agree.
Hunt.
He's the new Mark Hunt.
And I think he could
be
better.
He's the apprentice of Mark Hunt.
I think he could be even better.
I think so too. As long as he's open. I think Mark Hunt could have been better if he was open to
training better with his ground game.
And you know what? He did get better when he got into MMA at first, because he went to American Top Team, trained with wrestlers there, and his takedown defense got much better. He evolved his game a little bit, but yeah, it seems like he's kind of just he needs a change of pace. He's I don't know. I thought that was a fight that was an easy win for Mark, and it just kind of didn't go his way in the first round. You know, he was lighting him up at first.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Mark Hunt versus Gokhan Saki. Gokhan Saki, his last fight was against Khalil Roundtree. He is 1 for 2 in MMA fights, so neither of these guys have the best records lately. As of late, Mark Hunt is 1 for 4 in his last 4 fights. Gokhan Saki was knocked out against by Khalil Roundtree, and that is being proposed at heavyweight by Gokhan Saki. Mark Hunt accepted the internet offer, and I say, let him fight.
Oh, let him do it.
It's supposed to take place at UFC Adelaide, December 2nd. The card that I believe it's December 2nd. The card that Tai Tuivasa is headlining against Junior Dos Santos, and that is actually what's interesting about that is this is a great fight for Mark. It's an old school K1 fight. Gokhan's not looking to take him down. It's gonna be pure kickboxing. You're not gonna get matched up with a Curtis Blades or some shit. They're trying to take you down. And it's Mark's last hurrah in the UFC. It's his last fight in the UFC.
Yeah. Well, and another thing I've noticed is when fighters, when they're in a card with more of their colleagues and more of their teammates from camp, you see them perform a lot better. Because I guess they're going through the struggles with each other instead of trying to help each other, you know? So the last time that Mark Hunt and Tai Tuivasa was on the same card, they both performed very well. I believe Mark lost his fight, but Tai destroyed Cyril Hasker.
It's true.
Destroyed him.
That's another thing is how does Tai compete with a guy like Junior Dos Santos, whose game is boxing? Junior Dos Santos is a savvy vet, and the thing is, you're looking at Junior's resume. He's only lost the best of the best. I mean, he's on a 1, and he wins 1, he loses 1, he wins 1, loses 1. But he loses 1 to Kane, wins 1, loses 1 to Stipe. I mean, these aren't B-level guys he's fighting. You know? A guy who fought for the title, 2 years ago? So...
Well, I obviously think this is going to be the fight that would propel Tai into the mainstream.
Whether he's a top 5 or a top 10 fighter.
Exactly.
I'd like to see Tai versus Derek Lewis in the future.
Oh, easy.
I think that's a great... And the thing is, that would be getting one back for Derek Lewis as well, because the last win Mark had was a knockout of TKO of Derek Lewis.
Well, which Derek Lewis are we going to see? Are we going to see him scared like he was with Ngannou?
Well, I think Ngannou was more scared. Derek Lewis had that problem with his back.
Yeah,
and that's what pulled him out of that fight with Verdum in I think it was August of 2017.
I would like to see Ngannou versus Tai.
Because I'd love to see Ngannou versus Tai. I kind of thought they were going to make Ngannou versus Hunt.
There's no ground game. Well, I mean, that would have been a cool last card as well.
But that fight has also been confirmed. Ngannou's next fight has been confirmed as a rematch with Curtis Blades. Ngannou won the last fight with Curtis, an early Curtis Blades. And they both climbed the ladder. He won that fight by doctor stoppage.
Well, Curtis is a new man.
And yet I'd see, exactly. We'd see Curtis as the favorite in that fight, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a high-level wrestler against a guy with, an athletic talent, but no wrestling, it would seem.
Well, I wouldn't even put Curtis Blades as that athletically talented because if you see
Ngannou.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. Curtis in retrospect, because most of his games he's just a badass wrestler. That's all he wants to do. If he knows he's going to get hit hard, he's going to take you down. He's going to wrestle fuck you.
It's true, but
he's going to make sweet love. And I think I actually wasn't impressed by the Mark Hunt fight. I think what sold me on Curtis Blades, possibly being in a future title contender, is his fight against Overeem back in what was that? July? Back in July? June. It was UFC 225. Back in June, he fought Overeem, and what we saw is him outstriking Overeem, and we saw him going off on Overeem. But the thing is, we saw intelligence by Curtis, because what happened is he was patient. He was going off on him, but he knew he wasn't gonna get any. He wasn't gonna blow his load
blow his load, so to speak,
Yeah.
by just going off on Overeem. He took him down. As soon as he knew he'd hurt Overeem, he took him down. And he went back to his base. And that was a very intelligent move. And he comes from a good camp. I believe he comes from the same camp as it was Shane Carwin and Brendan Schaub's old camp that Rose Namajunas trains at, that Justin Gaethje trains at.
Oh, yeah.
It's good, yeah.
That's a pretty good camp.
The Trevor Whitman's camp. So, and Trevor Whitman's a boxing coach. So if he can improve Curtis's wrestling, that's a well-rounded heavyweight. And his wrestling, or his striking, however, against Mark Hunt looked super basic. But against Overeem,
Well, speaking of camps,
we don't know where Overeem's at.
Yeah. Well, speaking of camps, man, what about Dwayne Ludwig, man?
What about Dwayne Ludwig? I mean, that's a great.
He's a great coach.
Yeah, I mean, that's another one based in Colorado. He trains a lot of future title contenders. I mean, he trains TJ Dillashaw. He trains Aaron Pico. I can't remember who else. He's got a couple guys out there. Oh, Joseph Benavidez as well works with him. So, I mean, Dwayne Ludwig, as far as the striking, his and that's something Curtis could potentially drive out there, train with Dwayne for camp too. I don't know.
Dude, that would be sick, man. I mean, especially to increase his striking like that.
I mean, TJ started out a wrestler too, and his striking
is the best in that division.
And it's odd because if you go back to the second Cody versus TJ fight, it's almost like you pressed fast forward on the first fight because the exact same thing happened just in one round, compressed into one round. Cody knocks down TJ. He gets too excited. TJ knocks down Cody and then goes off and continues to knock him out. Well, he stuns Cody and then he gets back up and he knocks him out.
That's obviously coaching, and I mean, Team Alpha Male it's a good team, but
they lost their best Muay Thai coach though.
Yeah, I know,
and that's probably why.
But the fact that they haven't tried to replace that or even go in a different direction it's kind of sad because Cody had the potential to stay champion and maybe even reign like a Mighty Mouse.
I think he's the most talented striker in that division. And I think TJ, I mean, you can't say Cody's
his
the
hand
best
striking second to none.
I mean, look what he did to Dominic Cruz. But Dominic Cruz beat TJ.
TJ looked in those two fights versus Cody like a superhuman.
Yeah.
I don't know if the emotions got the best of Cody or what happened, but it was just a different animal.
So that fight against Gokhan Saki with Mark Hunt, I think it's a great fight. I'd like to see Gokhan Saki at heavyweight. If he, I don't know. I think he is a light heavyweight, clearly, but I'd say at this point, everyone should try moving up a weight class after what we saw from certain fighters this weekend, after we've seen from guys like, Cowboys struggled a little bit, but that's just because,
that's Cowboy.
That's Cowboy. He wins one, loses one, wins two, loses two, wins one, loses two, wins one. He's that kind of guy, unfortunately. But a lot of guys have had success with it. They just find that they have more power and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Next up, some very exciting news. Valentina Shevchenko versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk is confirmed for the flyweight title for UFC 231 in Toronto. So that's some very exciting news. They have a history in Muay Thai. I gotta be honest, and not that it's not a competitive fight, but for some background, they fought 3 times in Muay Thai, but it's not like Joanna won one, Valentina won 2. No, Valentina won all 3. And Valentina trains with, guess who? Rose Namajunas.
Mm-hmm.
That's possibly why Rose's striking's got so much better, is because that's apparently one of her main sparring partners, Valentina Shevchenko. So I don't see it being a super competitive fight. I would like to see Joanna move up to 115 or 125 rather. And I think at 115 it's odd because I see her beating pretty much everyone in that division except Rose, and yet I see more people being able to beat Rose than beat Joanna.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think Rose just has her number. But I can see...
Just her kryptonite.
Yeah, basically. And I can see Jessica Andrade beating Rose, but I can't see her beating Joanna right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. the only other one besides Rose that I think could possibly beat Joanna, and it was a fight up until now that I was kind of excited to see, was a strawweight bout between Tatiana Suarez, who was an Olympic quality wrestler with a great story. She got cancer, so unfortunately she wasn't able to compete as an Olympic wrestler, and then she came back and dominated Carla Esparza, got it at 228. UFC 228 in Dallas. I was really excited to see that fight, but this, who knows? Maybe we see a new Joanna at 125.
Oh, you never know.
It's not like Valentina is draining herself to get to 220 or to get to 125 because she is a natural flyweight. She was too small for that division, and yet she was still beating girls like Holly Holm in kickboxing in a kickboxing fight. She lost a split decision to Amanda Nunes. One of the judges thought she won that fight. So I think Valentina is one of the pound for pound best, if not the pound for pound best female fighter, and I think she'll get that credit soon. Unfortunate to see anyone lose their flyweight title, of course, Nico Montano, but if we can cut the shit, Nico wasn't the champion.
Yeah.
Nico was the champion and she wasn't. She won on tough. She wasn't facing the kind of talent, like, to jump up from Roxanne Modafferi, who she fought in the finale, to fighting Valentina Shevchenko is insane, and it's dangerous. It's like jumping from your number 15 in the rankings to fighting the number 1 contender.
Oh yeah.
It's a little bit, and it's fun because that, surprisingly though, flyweight is not a super thin division. Because there's so much talent. When I look through the amount of talent there is in that division, I'm really excited. There's girls coming down from 135, like Jessica Ai and Valentina. There's girls coming up from 115, like Paige Van Zant. Maybe that's not the best example of talent, but Paige Van Zant.
Well, still,
Joanna Jędrzejczyk.
The balls to move up is pretty crazy.
It's pretty crazy, but I'm glad to see girls who have been natural flyweights, but they didn't have the option to move up in weight to their natural weight. I think that's a good move. And I think, you know what, Jessica Andrade moved from a bantamweight. She was beating girls at bantamweight. She beat Raquel Pennington and lost to Raquel Pennington, but she was beating girls at bantamweight, moved all the way down to strawweight. I think we see Jessica Andrade, if she doesn't win this title against Rose, because I'm assuming she has to get the next title shot. If she doesn't win that fight for whatever reason, she's got to move up to flyweight too. Yeah. She could be a very exciting contender there too. So that's exciting. That's hopefully going to be a good fight. Maybe we see some more power out of Joanna, and some versatility there. I don't necessarily think it's just going to be a pure kickboxing fight. I think Valentina has a very well-rounded game. Joanna has a pretty well-rounded game too. Her takedown defense is amazing, and she's very strong too. She's, but she's strong at strawweight. Maybe she's stronger at flyweight. Maybe she's not. Maybe competing against flyweights is a little harder. But we'll see.
Yep.
Next bit of news: Conor McGregor signs 8-fight deal. I've heard 8 and I've heard 6, but 8-fight deal with his whiskey Proper 12, his new whiskey that's debuted this week, as a sponsor on all his fights from now on, including UFC 229, his fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov. However, I don't see Conor McGregor fighting 6 to 8 more times in the UFC. I see, if we're lucky, we see him 3 more times. We see, I think, 1, maybe 2 more boxing matches. I could see it. If he loses to Khabib, I think he has a boxing match a second boxing match, probably with Floyd Mayweather, and then he retires.
Well, let's be honest.
Not that anyone wants to see that fight.
Floyd finished that fight. It wasn't a decision. It didn't last until the late rounds. That fight was finished.
It was.
And now coming back, and your cardio could get better, and who knows? I mean, maybe in a year of more cardio training, Conor could come in there. He could dominate Floyd, because we did see in the earlier rounds he got some good shots on Floyd that actually moved him.
He was winning every round. Probably, I'd say he had
a few in there that he won.
He won the majority of the rounds in a 30-minute fight against Floyd Mayweather, the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time. I don't want to hear this shit about he's an old man. I don't want to hear that shit about he's 40 or 41 years old. Fuck that. He's Floyd Mayweather.
Yeah.
Conor McGregor is one of the most talented men alive. He went from he's a striker. That's his game. In MMA, he's not a boxer. It's a completely different game. And people who don't understand that, they just flat out don't understand either game.
Oh, of course.
So for him to even go 30 minutes like that, and he obviously lost the last 2 rounds. He faded a little bit, but I'm not interested in seeing a rematch. But I'll tell you what, they'll still make a ton of money. If he loses to Khabib, that's probably his best move, is just get a bunch of money and get out.
Well, I don't know if you remember the drama that became right before that fight, where Conor had some drama issues with that Pauly guy.
Pauly Malignaggi?
Yeah, who's actually training him. That would be a cool fight to see.
I could see that fight.
Just because Pauly's skill level isn't as
I don't
good.
think he makes nearly as much money as if he fights Floyd, but I could see that fight. The
Remember,
promotion.
Pauly also is a champion as well.
Pauly, yeah. And Conor dropped him in sparring, and there was a video of that, and
I mean, I could see people paying for that because Conor's going to have an audience no matter what he does, and for people to see like, okay, well, he did pretty good against Floyd, despite being finished.
But he dropped Pauly.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, so he dropped.
They would, I would watch that fight definitely.
Yeah. Next bit of news. Tyron Woodley, unfortunately, is out of the running for the UFC 230 title defense.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately. What are you gonna say? I know what you're gonna say.
I'm just saying, dude.
What are you saying?
I hate champions like Tyron and Conor. I hate them. I love Conor, but I hate
I love Tyron and Conor.
I hate the way they are, man.
Why?
They're injured or they're running from fights or whatever. I mean, Colby deserved that title shot.
He couldn't fight at UFC 228.
Well, they could have easily waited until this fight.
That's true.
But
what else?
didn't.
You know what else is interesting? Colby was saying, and I don't know when it started happening, but I know it was a long issue, is that what he had is, sinusitis, and mucus was basically getting into his lungs, and he said he could barely breathe. How much better is Colby's cardio going to be now that he can breathe? His performance against Dos Anjos, he couldn't breathe, he said. So, I mean, look, it sucks. I don't know exactly why Tyron can't. I think it's his hand. He broke his hand on Darren Till's face. But that's the next fight. There's no getting around it, Tyron. There's no GSP. Darren Till, you beat him. Who's next? You're not fighting Wonder Boy again. I think Tyron wants that fight. You don't think Tyron wants that fight? It's the first fight. If Tyron wins, it's gonna make him look like Batman fighting the Joker.
Yeah,
but it makes him a superhero. He beat the bad guy.
If Tyron,
he beat the MAGA wearing.
If Tyron had that mentality, he would have fought more guys sooner than he has.
Mm-hmm.
If you had the mindset of I'm gonna go beat the best guy right now, like Conor has, he said I'll fight anybody anywhere.
I definitely think he has a casual approach to being the champion. However, he has so much athletic talent and stuff. When it gets down to training camp time, he's all in. The rest of the time, he's on TMZ. He's filming little bit roles in movies. He's fucking trying to do stand-up or some shit, and he's releasing terrible songs with Wiz Khalifa.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are you doing?
No, my brother.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. He's out of the main event for Madison Square Garden. But we'll see that fight. I'm not worried about that. Probably January, maybe February. Maybe the same card that Stipe and Ngannou fought on last year will probably be Colby versus Tyron. So that's going to go down. So that's the news for this week. Next up, we got a recap of UFC Sao Paulo. So, a couple bits of news here. Oh, one more thing for the news. A bit of bad news. Kid Yamamoto, famed lightweight and then bantamweight fighter, has passed away this past week. at the age of 41 from stomach cancer, which he kept a secret for obvious reasons from the press and stuff. He didn't even get it treated in Japan because he didn't want people to find out. He got it treated in Guam, and so he passed away this weekend. A lot of respect from a lot of the fighters, the MMA community coming together. Josh Thompson credits him with his success and getting into the UFC from their fight in Hawaii when they fought each other. So yeah, it's unfortunate. Very exciting fighter. Super quick knockout. I forget what organization. Dream or something. With a flying knee in the first few seconds of the fight. But super exciting fighter. Shame to hear that. But it's good to see the MMA community rallying together instead of snarling at each other like they usually do. Except for the UFC Sao Paulo recap, we have a couple bits of news for this. Charles Oliveira broke the most submission record in UFC history. He has 12 submissions now after his submission victory the other night. And the previous record holder was Royce Gracie himself, who had 11 submission victories. Third is tied between Nate Diaz and Damian Maia, who are tied with 9 submissions each.
Well, you would think that people that were facing him would train their submission defense better.
He's good. I mean, you know, I'd like to see him get a higher level opponent in his next fight as well. Renan Barão also was beaten by Andre Ewell, which is kind of astounding if you watch Barão's, and it's a little bit suspect. He lost his title to TJ Dillashaw, and then he fought someone else, blanking. He beat them, and then he fought TJ again, lost again. But his second fight against TJ, and he was beating everyone before that. I mean, Renan Barão was legit. He was beating everyone before that, and he's on a losing streak. He's lost 5 out of his last 6 fights, and coincidentally, just for some reference, he lost to TJ. He won against someone else, and then July 25th of 2015 was his fight with TJ. He lost again. Nothing suspect there to lose to a guy you already lost to, but just for some reference, USADA went into effect in the UFC July 1st of 2015. So there is that. And then it's not suspect for him to lose to TJ again. It's just suspect for him to have this crazy of a skid after that. I mean, did TJ break him? I mean, that's another thing. Did TJ break Cody? We don't know.
I thought USADA broke him.
Yeah, USADA might have.
TJ was broke. He definitely broke Cody.
Yeah. So, pretty crazy to see an ex-champ get
decimated.
I mean, he lost this fight to a split decision, so it wasn't anything crazy. But in Brazil, losing a split decision too. So, I mean, but then, you know, maybe it was a changing of the guard. Maybe the game evolves, man. The game evolves. We're seeing now bantamweight's a super stacked division. We're seeing at the top we have TJ Dillashaw, the most well-rounded fighter possibly we've ever seen besides Demetrius Johnson. And beneath him, I mean, look at all these guys could be champions, and some of them have. In the top 10 alone, you have Aljamain Sterling, John Lineker, Jimmy Rivera, Marlon Moraes, Rafael Assunção, Dominic Cruz, Cody Garbrandt, and none of those guys are even champion. So the talent in that division, I mean, watch Aljamain Sterling's submission victory over Cody Stamann at UFC 228. In any other division, not any other. I mean, there's a couple other who are as stacked as bantamweight. Lightweight is one of them. Middleweight and featherweight are probably the lighter weight classes besides flyweight are super stacked with contenders. We're starting. You know what? We're starting to see it in the rest of the divisions as well as the game evolves and our younger generation becomes more well-rounded. I mean, we're seeing it in flyweight. The contenders emerge every day. Guys like Davison Figueiredo, Henry Cejudo from his first fight with Mighty Mouse to his second fight with Mighty Mouse.
Yeah.
So we're seeing guys like that appear in every division. It's good. But yeah, maybe
there's no greater time to be an MMA fan than today.
There's not. It's the golden age. And then we had a draw between two talented young women. Marina Rodriguez. I'd like Randa Marcos, very talented strawweight, lost her last fight at UFC Calgary to Nina Ansaroff. It's a shame when you see a talented fighter, not be able to express it in their record, but that's the game. And then also Jillian Robertson, who I believe that's her name, Jillian Roberts or Robertson, Canadian female fighter in the flyweight division, lost in a spectacular submission. I'm blanking on her opponent's name, but she was going off. She was about to TKO this girl, just slipped up and got caught. So, and unfortunately the girl was crying on the stool and whatnot. So, I mean, but,
it's a shame.
It's a shame to see that, but, it's good to see that too. We're all human. She's passionate about her sport.
Yep.
That's good to see. And she's super talented too. She'll be back. She's one of our young flyweights who's, very talented girl. Beat Molly McCann in her debut at UFC Fight Night Liverpool, headlined by Wonderboy and Till. So she's super talented. And then we had our main event. And the history of our main event is kind of funny and convoluted. We had Thiago Santos. First off, it was Glover Teixeira versus Jimmy Manuwa. And then Glover Teixeira dropped out. I guess Shogun wasn't ready to hop in there for Glover Teixeira after his loss to Anthony Smith. So they brought in a middleweight in Thiago Santos, big middleweight, to fight Jimmy Manuwa. And then the week of the fight, I think 7 or 6 days before, Jimmy Manuwa, doing sprints, pulled or tore his hamstring. Got pulled from the fight.
It's a rough one.
Yeah. So your boy, Eric Anders, got brought in. Little Brown got brought in to
that guy's an athlete.
Yeah, give him some history on his...
National champion.
I didn't know this until 2 seconds ago.
National champion at Alabama Crimson Tide. He was a linebacker. He actually helped destroy my Longhorns team. I'm still crying about that to this day.
Yeah, so super talented, athletic guy. Some call him the Greg Hardy of the middleweight division. In that
I could definitely see that.
And that he's good, but when he makes it to the UFC, he realized that he's not fighting women anymore. So, and an athletic football player to boot. So he's an athletic guy.
More and more in this day and age, we're seeing fighters' wives become their sparring partners.
Yeah, that's the thing. Travis Brown, Floyd Mayweather, really... it's really on them a little bit. You got to blame the women.
You'd think Ray Rice would try the UFC now. He was in a small octagon in the elevator with his wife.
Yeah,
just tore her to shreds.
Yeah, so don't hit your wives.
Yeah, don't do that. That's not. It's funny to joke later, but during the event, it's never good.
Yeah, don't beat your wives. But I get it sometimes, but. No, but don't. But
come home, dinner's cold.
Mainly because they can't take a punch and it'll look really bad. But, if it's a contest. If your wife is Chris Cyborg, don't hit her because she's going to beat your ass.
She's beating your ass.
Yeah, you're going to get fucked later. And you're not...
Not the good kind.
You're not the one with the dick in that scenario. So.
Yeah,
So, yes, Thiago Santos beat Eric Anders in a kind of not funny, an impressive and kind of weird... fight. It was a good war back and forth, and then in the third round, I think Eric Anders just got tired. He was coming off that really good win. I forget if it was Gaethje versus Vic Fight Night, or if it was I think it was Gaethje versus Vic. He fought and he knocked the guy out with basically a soccer kick to the head, and it was a great victory. But that was a war too, up until that point. So, he probably had a little bit of residuals from that fight. What can I say? 6 days notice, not a full training camp.
Definitely.
And he kind of looked like he gassed out because he was getting it in the third round. He's getting his ass beat. He's just getting beaten up. He's trying desperately to take Santos down, and he's just getting punched in the face.
Well, you're talking about losing months of fight camp.
Mm-hmm.
The preparation for that, I mean, they have it down to a science. And if you're 6 days in, I mean, you're not in shape.
Yeah.
You're not.
No.
I mean, you're eating cheeseburgers on Monday, and then Tuesday, it's cut week.
No, the ball's on that guy, though, to take that fight against somebody like Santos.
Well, he's a champion.
Yeah.
You know.
Oh, in football, yeah.
As in being a football player, you know, like you face adversity.
Championship mindset.
So, in the mindset, you know, it's just another obstacle.
All the respect to that guy. A lot of respect for each other after the fight. Santos and Eric Anders. All love. Just got his ass beat in the but it was weird because he was like falling on the ref after the third round, and they stopped it actually in between rounds, so it was a TKO in round 3, but they had to stop it after the round because he couldn't make it back to his stool. So yeah, interesting fight. Two powerful middleweights. Eric Anders says he's going back to middleweight, but I'd like to see Santos at light heavyweight.
Yeah.
And that brings us to our next segment, matchmaking, which brings us to the matches we'd like to see. We'd like to see these people get matched up with in their next bouts. We got Ryan Spann, a fighter off the Contender Series in the light heavyweight division. This is what I'm talking about. New talent that's being brought in, flushed into the UFC from the new generation. Tyson Pedro is one of those guys, and that's who I'd like to see Ryan Spann fight. Ryan Spann's Ryan Superman Spann, dangerous guy. I think he's undefeated, or he's 15-1, but won 15 of his fights. I think he's won 12 of them by knockout or TKO, 2 of them by submission, and 1 by decision. So he's a dangerous light heavyweight.
He's a finisher.
It's good to have guys like that in the UFC, in the light heavyweight division, a division that could use it.
Definitely. And
since Patrick the Durkin Cummins is matched up at the moment, I'd like to see him face Tyson Pedro, whose last fight was against OSP. Somebody in the top 10 who, it's not too much too soon. I think, that could be an entertaining fight, and it'll show us where Pedro's at, but more importantly, it'll show us where Ryan Spann's at in terms of top 15, top
dominance.
10 potential. Yeah. So, if he's ready for the top 15. Alex Oliveira, another stunning performance, a KO in something like 30 to 45 seconds or something like that.
Okay.
Last fight before that was a submission over Carlos Condit. I mean, he's had a bumpy road. He lost to Cowboy. He's lost to Yancy Medeiros in one of the most entertaining fights of all time. Got knocked out by Yancy Medeiros finally. Came back against Carlos Condit, beat him by submission. I mean, just a really dangerous guy. I'd like to see him move up and fight Gunnar Nelson. Gunnar Nelson's coming off an injury. He was supposed to fight Neil Magny at UFC Liverpool, but it looks like he's healed up. He's training again. Two dangerous guys and dangerous submission artists with a lot of grit. I think that would be an entertaining fight. And then Eric Anders, I'd like to see him back in middleweight against Elias Theodoro? I don't know. Whatever. The Spartan, who's been talking all kinds of shit online and has a fight at UFC 231 in Toronto. Hopefully Eric didn't get too many of his brains bashed out so he can make that.
Yeah, hopefully.
I mean, but
poor guy.
But Elias is talking all kinds of shit online, and they're talking shit at each other. They clearly have a rivalry. I'd like to see
Eric?
that.
He's talking shit to Eric?
Yeah.
Well, of course, because you just saw him lose.
No, he was talking shit to him before too. But
so now he's extra cocky that he lost.
Yeah, exactly. So they're
of course.
Yeah. So he was supposed to fight Antonio Carlos Jr. He pulled out, and so now he's going to be fighting. He doesn't have a dance partner. So hopefully Eric Anders can make that date. It's in December. And for Thiago Santos, I'd like to see him stay at 205, and I'd like to see him versus Jimmy Manawa, because I'd like to see those two powerhouses go at it, and I'd like to see the fight we were promised, because that's an interesting match of two powerful big guys.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see if Thiago Santos can make some waves in the light heavy division. I'd like to see a lot of middleweights move up to light heavyweight, the big ones, because we've already seen guys like Anthony Smith move up this year. After, by the way, a loss to Thiago Santos by body kick. Anthony Smith moved up, has had tons of success there. So having Santos move up and fight Jimmy Manuwa, that would show Manuwa's standing after losing his last 3 fights, and could potentially move Thiago Santos, launch him into the top 10 in the 205-pound division.
Definitely.
Another thing I wanted to discuss now, probably should have talked about this in news, is the UFC 229 press conference that took place in New York City this past week.
Oh, yeah.
Your thoughts on that press conference?
Obviously, I remember talking with you after you saw that, and you kind of stressed to me how just awkward it is with McGregor now that there's no audience. There's only reporters.
Yeah, it seemed like
there was an eerie feel.
There was a little bit of eerie feeling, and he was trying to. It was almost like the first Floyd press conference where he was trying to find his standing as far as like he didn't really know what to do with himself. He was improvising on the fly. He didn't do a bad job. Oh
no, of course not. It's Conor McGregor, the greatest shit talker in the sport.
And I think he was a little subdued at first, and I think that was good. Neither guys touched each other. I mean, they're in New York City.
Oh, that face-off.
That face-off was intense.
Khabib, Mr. Blue Lips.
Khabib is calm as ever. Conor is like a gnashing, biting pit bull.
It's passion, man.
Unfortunately, it may be a disadvantage to McGregor. I don't know if they're having another press conference or not, but Khabib was not as phased as guys like Aldo were, as guys like Eddie Alvarez were when they were fighting Conor. I mean, it's a completely different animal. And I definitely think he got under Khabib's skin, especially, I think the first maybe 20 minutes, nothing. But then once he started to get into it with Dagestan and and the Dagestanis have chicken jaws and your father this and you took money from Magomedov and talking about Putin and stuff and are you saying you don't like Putin and stuff? So now Khabib is risking, if he answers that question honestly, he's risking losing his Russian fan base. So
yep.
I definitely think he got under Khabib's skin. I don't know that affects Khabib like it affects a guy like Alvarez or Aldo.
Well, of course it does. I mean, let's be honest here.
It affects him, but does it make
Khabib
him...
hasn't fought anybody in the top 5.
Does it make him overextend?
He hasn't fought anybody in the top 5, and he's got the title.
He fought Dos Anjos. He fought... But I agree, he hasn't fought... It's interesting, because we still don't know. We were supposed to find out at UFC I don't know, 223. We were supposed to find out at 223 who the lightweight champion is. Is it Tony Ferguson now that Conor's out, or is it Khabib? Who's the legit lightweight? And by the way, the lineal lightweight title is with Conor. So whoever wins that has to fight Conor. We didn't get that fight. We didn't even get him versus Pettis or anyone. We got him versus the number 10 ranked Al Iaquinta, which Al's
11.
tough as nails.
11.
Al's tough as nails, but he didn't win the title.
Yep.
He was given the title. He didn't win the title off the number 1 contender. He didn't win it off Tony Ferguson. He didn't even win it off Max Holloway.
I would be more understanding for Khabib if he would have finished Al Iaquinta. The guy's ranked number 11. I know it's a 1 day's notice, but Khabib is he's in fight shape. He's went through his whole camp preparing for an even better fighter than Al, and he still didn't finish him. Matter of fact, his wrestling got worse in the later rounds.
And that's another thing that we'll talk about in a minute, and that's another point I want to bring up is Khabib. Everyone knows Conor fades. Khabib seems to fade as well. Does he fade if you can keep him off you, or does he fade no matter what? We don't know. Mm-hmm. He's only fought in that 1 5-round fight. Every other fight was 3 rounds. Barboza, and there's another top 5 fighter he fought, but he fought Barboza. Well, Barboza's like 6 or something now. But he fought Barboza, was able to keep him down, but it was only 3 rounds. Got a decision there, too. Some guys have a problem with finishing. I mean,
which Conor does not have a problem with.
Not at all. It's the opposite styles.
Plus, I mean, Conor's striking is out of this world. We've seen it multiple times. Is his wrestling good as Khabib? probably not. Khabib's a great wrestler.
It's just not.
But I mean, Al Iaquinta, I know he had background in wrestling, but he was just defending takedowns left and right. Khabib looked bad in those later rounds.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the pressure goes, I'm ecstatic. It felt, Dana White said this himself, it felt dark. It felt eerie, and that was because of the lack of the audience, and it was because you didn't have all these audience cheering and whatnot whenever Conor made a joke. It was just two guys who hate each other sitting next to each other and having to yell back and forth.
Well, yeah, but my biggest thing is the passion in the fighter, right? Obviously, you could be talented all you want, but if you don't have the passion and you don't have that drive, then you're never going to be that level. Now, I think from the press conference alone, you can tell that Conor still got that passion. He still wants to be a champion.
He wants to beat Khabib. He wants that. That's the thing. Conor is a champion. Does he? Look, let's be real. He's not active, but and he may have been stripped of the title. He's the last one to have earned the title. And the thing is you can strip them because they're not active. I mean, GSP is technically the lineal middleweight champion, but Robert Whittaker was there. However, Robert Whittaker also beat Yoel Romero, the best in that division.
Yep.
Khabib, we didn't see that from him. We didn't see him fight Tony. We didn't even see him fight Kevin Lee or anyone up.
Exactly.
So,
and that raises my biggest concern.
It raises a lot of concerns. We've seen what Khabib can do, and it's overwhelming. But against the lateral movement and stuff of Conor, and that'll bring us to our next segment. So let's circle back to that, which is the UFC 229 predictions. And we're gonna breeze through these prelim fights real fast. Some fighters you may or may not have heard of. Aspen Ladd, female bantamweight fight between Aspen Ladd and Tanya Evinger. Aspen Ladd 6-0, Tanya Evinger 19-6. Tanya last fight was against, I don't know if it was her last fight, but she's been fighting as a featherweight. Fought against Chris Cyborg against the second inaugural women's featherweight.
Well, did she fight Chris Cyborg, or did she get mauled by Chris Cyborg?
Yeah, of course.
That's a different animal.
So Tanya versus Aspen. Tanya's tough.
I'm gonna go with the more experienced fighter.
You're gonna go Tanya?
Yeah.
By how? What would you say?
I would say this probably go in the I would say the more later round.
Mm-hmm.
Unless, I mean, who knows? They could go in and just stand and bang. But champions are people who are built to weather the storm.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the person who can survive the most damage and live out the later rounds is gonna be the winner.
That's a good point.
Either by decision,
super tough.
Either by decision or submission. Unconventional.
So what would you say if you had to make a guess? How does Tanya Evinger finish the fight?
Third round submission.
I'm gonna say Aspen Ladd third round submission.
Okay.
So there we go. Okay, I'm gonna go with beauty over age. So.
You gotta take experience, man.
All right. So it's true. Aspen Ladd, I think, is just a super well-rounded, super up-and-coming prospect. Beat, I think it was Lena Landsberg in her last fight. So I'm gonna go Aspen Ladd third round submission. Sergio Pettis versus Huzier Formiga. Sergio's looked great. I mean, his striking is crisp, everything about it. He's shown a lot of improvements, especially in the Joseph Benavidez fight. Since his even the fight before that against Cejudo that he lost. I think Sergio Pettis has has a good chance to be one of the next prospects in the division. Obviously, if Cejudo keeps the belt, it'll be hard for him to get a title shot for at least another year, because that fight was kind of recent between them. But I'm going to go Sergio Pettis. Sergio Pettis second round TKO.
That's exactly what I was going to say as well.
Yeah, I mean...
Very believable. Very believable.
And his head movement, everything... That Joseph Benavidez fight was so fun to watch, because Joseph is... I mean, he's top 3 in the division. He beat Henry Cejudo by split decision. I mean, Joseph has some of the best striking in the division as well. So, to see him do that, and that was a great fight. It could have gone either way. You could have called it a draw, honestly, but some of the techniques he displayed in that fight were super impressive, and his speed is really impressive as well. Jose Formiga, super talented guy as well. I don't know. Honestly, it's going to be a great fight. I'll take it back. Sergio Pettis decision.
Okay.
I'm going to say unanimous decision. Next up, Sean O'Malley. Sugar Sean O'Malley.
Oh, yeah.
My man against Jose Quinones. I don't know much about Jose Quinones. I'm not going to lie to you guys. This is a bantamweight fight. From what I've seen of Sean O'Malley, I mean, he's a tall bantamweight. He's 5'11". He's long, he's lanky, and his striking is super crisp. Everyone knows if he has one weakness, it's his ground game. Broke his leg in his last fight, or injured his leg, and still won the fight. So I'm gonna give it to Sean O'Malley, first round TKO.
I believe that as well.
All right, and next up,
Sugar Sean's just good, man.
He's good. His striking is
really good.
He's really good. His striking super crisp. Everything's there with his technique as far as his striking, and then he's been working on his ground game too. And that's another thing is you have to factor in how much room for improvement they have. With a guy like Shogun, guys like Rampage, you don't see a lot of room for improvement. But with a young kid like Sugar Sean O'Malley, sky's the limit. Mm-hmm. Next up, we got Michelle, the Karate Hottie Watterson versus Felice Lil Bulldog Herrig. Felice, super athletic, very tough, and Michelle just small even for strawweight. She's an atomweight naturally, a 105er, but just super competitive. Loses to some of the best and beats everyone beneath her. She's kind of that top 5 or top 6er where if you can beat her, you belong in that top 5, top 6, and if you don't, that kind of cements where you're at beneath her. Kind of like up until recently, kind of a Mark Hunt. I used to say if you can beat Andrei Arlovsky, you belong in the top 10 at heavyweight. If you can beat Mark Hunt, you belong in the top 5. But it doesn't seem that holds true anymore, but still. I don't know. Felice pressures. Likes to pressure. Michelle, when she gets pressured, she goes back into that traditional. She goes back into her traditional karate background, her traditional martial arts background. I like Michelle a lot.
Doesn't she also train with John Jones and Holly Holm?
She trains at Jackson Wink, yeah. So she trains with John Jones.
That's who I'm going with. I'm gonna go with that.
I'm gonna go Michelle Watterson, split decision. I think it's gonna be a tough fight.
Yeah, definitely.
Next up, I know you're gonna be excited about this one. Derek the Black Beast Lewis versus Alexander Drago Volkov. It's a scary fight for Derek Lewis, I'm not gonna lie. And we're huge fans of him as Texans, and just as Instagram users. Huge fans of his, and
I think he's got it.
Why?
Just because.
Break it down for me.
Well, you got to think his last fight with Ngannou, the amount of backlash he got from that fight.
And he says his back is better.
So, I think he's going to be able to prove a point. At least in my opinion. That's what I've seen.
I've seen that mentality from Derek Lewis too. I've also seen the mentality of he's not quite awake, and then he wakes up halfway through. Yep. He's got this berserker thing. It's not unlike guys like Eddie Alvarez who have to take a beating for most of the first round and then come back and beat your ass. They have to get punched in the face a little bit to get their motivation.
Fire going, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've seen that from Derek Lewis in every fight. In his fight against Travis Brown, he's getting his ass beat, comes back viciously, destroys Travis Brown. I mean, just the power on Derek Lewis. Him and Ngannou, tit for tat for the most powerful in the division. His fight even with Mark Hunt, he's doing the same thing. that ended differently because you can't just stand in the pocket and trade with Mark Hunt, or you're getting your ass knocked out. I mean, we knew that going in. One of them was going to get knocked out. But Derek, you know, he likes to take a few at first. He likes to take some punishment. You can't just stand there and take punishment from the super small. So that fight ended differently. And then his fight in Austin against Marcin Tybura, same thing. Marcin's going off. He ends up knocking him out. You know, so you always have to be careful of Derek Lewis. However, Volkov, I think, is aware of that. I don't know. I don't know if Derek Lewis is explosive enough to impose his will on Volkov. I don't see him being well-rounded enough. I don't see him stepping in and knocking out Volkov.
Oh, it's definitely a possibility.
I think it's
in heavyweight, that's definitely a possibility.
I think it's always possible, but with a long guy like Volkov and a guy who is very intelligent, he knows what you're capable of too as far as your toughness. I don't think Volkov's even going for the finish in this one. In fact, I think they're always going for the finish, but I think Volkov's going to take his time, be very patient.
Be more calculated, probably.
I wish I could go Derek. So you're going Derek Lewis. What round? KO.
3.
I was gonna say Derek Lewis KO because I could see him firing back, but I just think Volkov's going to be real patient. He's fought guys like that before. And Roy Nelson, he had an impressive showing in his knockout in March against Verdum, who was on not Clem, Tren.
He's on something.
He was on Trin, as it turned out.
God, dude.
So he's been hanging out at Gold's Venice, and Volkov knocked him out. I think Volkov, unanimous decision.
Okay.
And you said what round again?
3rd.
Next up, we got Ovens St. Preux, OSP, versus Dominic the Devastator Reyes. And this is a really interesting fight because it's another light heavyweight fight where we're seeing a contender emerge. Dominic Reyes has shown that he's a really dominant fighter, and that he can really hold his own in that division. Now we're just trying to see if he can hold his own with a guy like OSP, someone that explosive in the top 10, maybe make a name for himself in the top 10, move into that position. What do you think, Logan?
Oh, man.
What do you think? Against a guy like OSP, Dominic Reyes.
I don't know.
Not a lot of people are super familiar with Dominic Reyes.
In my gut, I trust that OSP is gonna be a little bit more dominant in the showing.
OSP is super unorthodox. He's super explosive and strong. Has a great submission game.
I could actually see him getting the submission.
Choke.
I could see him getting the submission.
Like he did. I mean, even in his fight against Tyson Pedro, you know, and that's the guy. So Tyson Pedro is a super talented guy too, but fought him. I almost saw that fight going the opposite way. I thought, if anything, it would be OSP who gets the flash knockdown and then Tyson Pedro who submits him. It's the opposite. Tyson Pedro jumps in and gets the flash knockdown of OSP, capitalizes on it too much, lets his guard down, and then gets submitted in the straight armbar. He just gets caught. So OSP can catch you at any moment. He's super unorthodox. Like John Jones said, he doesn't know what he's about to throw. So it could really go any way. What are you saying? You're saying OSP submission?
Oh, yeah. I'd say 2nd round submission.
I'm going to say Dominic Reyes TKO 2nd round.
Ooh. Toasty. That's going to be a good one to watch, definitely.
Yeah, so that's my take on it. Dominic Reyes, just a fucking...
savage.
Just a savage. Just a super talented guy. Not a great picture, though.
Yeah.
Kind of a butterface.
That's a lot coming from him.
And then we get to our co-main event, which is a fight I don't feel like anyone's talking about because everyone's talking about Conor Khabib. This is a great card between Tony El Khahui Ferguson and Anthony.
Just say Kukui.
And Anthony Showtime Pettis. Anthony Pettis looked great. I would definitely say Tony Ferguson.
Tony.
Before his last fight against Chiesa. I mean, Pettis was on a skid, and he fought Chiesa, and he looked like the old Showtime.
And Tony's coming off an injury.
And Tony's coming off an injury. He's older, too, I think.
Is he going to wear shades this time?
Undoubtedly.
He frustrates me.
Yeah.
He mentally frustrates me.
Yeah, so Tony Ferguson, we got to see where he's at. I'm sure he's fine. But I think it'll be more about, I don't think this is actually an easy matchup for Tony. I think there are easier matchups of guys who could beat Pettis, who I'd say right away they're going to knock out Pettis or they're going to submit Pettis or something.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say Kevin Lee dominates Anthony Pettis.
Oh, definitely.
But I'd say Tony Ferguson beats Kevin Lee, as we saw. Although Kevin Lee is one of the most talented guys in the division. I think Anthony Pettis has troubles with a guy like Gaethje, but I think Tony Ferguson dominates a guy like Gaethje.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, but matchup-wise, it's intriguing to me. The kicks of Anthony Pettis are going to be a factor. However, it is going to be Anthony Pettis dealing with the chaotic tornado that is Tony Ferguson.
Well, and Tony Ferguson's a pupil under Eddie Bravo.
Yeah, he has a really unorthodox jiu-jitsu style, and he does crazy shit. He does like Umanari rolls and backflips and backflip kicks and all kinds of shit.
Definitely get a strained.
A lot of spinning back fists, a lot of, but he gets hit a lot too. He gets clipped a lot. The thing is, my prediction for this fight is interesting because if there's a finish in this fight, any finish at all, I'm going to say Tony Ferguson. I don't see Anthony Pettis finishing Tony Ferguson. It's just my take. However, I think it's going to be a unanimous decision, Anthony Pettis.
I think Tony's going to finish it.
How so?
I think he's going to submit him in the second round.
Second round submission, Tony Ferguson.
I could definitely see that.
I could see anything going down with Tony. I could see Tony TKOing him in the first round.
Yep.
KOing him in the first round. But I'm going to say Pettis unanimous decision.
It's a bold move, Cotton.
Yeah. I don't know why. I don't know why my guts lead me that way. And that brings us to our main event. Conor McGregor versus Khabib, the Eagle, Nurmagomedov. So, you're very opinionated.
Yeah.
What do you think about this fight?
I think Conor's got it. I think he does.
Break it down for me.
I think he's just a champion. I mean, he's got passion. He's got heart. He's fought a lot of people that you would say. I mean, Nate Diaz. He's going to be up there in the UFC Hall of Fame most likely.
Undoubtedly.
And I mean,
certainly his fight with Conor is the second one.
Oh, undoubtedly. I just think it's a different animal. I mean, you're facing high level competition almost regularly, but you're not just decision winning them. You're knocking them out or submitting them. I mean, Jose Aldo.
Yeah.
That dude, whenever they fought, Jose Aldo was like a big deal.
Jose Aldo was undefeated for almost 10 years when they fought.
Max Holloway. It was a young Max Holloway.
He surprises us. It was a young Max Holloway. But Conor's career keeps looking better and better. He fought his second fight in the UFC. Max Holloway. No one knew what Max Holloway was going to become. Dustin Poirier.
Mm-hmm. He's a beast right now, by the way.
Chad Mendes.
Yeah.
Jose Aldo. And with each of their accomplishments now that they go on from after losing to Conor,
it
makes him look exponentially better.
Yep.
Dustin Poirier is in title contention at lightweight.
Yep.
They fought at featherweight. Max Holloway is the champ at featherweight. Jose Aldo knocked out Jeremy Stevens with a body shot back in Calgary. I mean, his resume improves with time.
Oh, it's
it
impeccable.
ages like wine. He beat Eddie Alvarez, who it's not a...
Took him forever to get knocked out.
2 rounds. I mean, he was just getting clipped over and over again. But yeah, I mean, he got knocked down.
Throughout his career.
Oh, well, yeah. Oh, yeah. And Nate Diaz doesn't get knocked out by anyone. So, I mean, even that head kick from Josh Thompson didn't have him out.
Yeah.
He just had him down. So,
yep.
I don't know what the fuck's going on with their skulls.
That's just what it boils down to, man. Is the level of competition faced, the amount of heart and passion in the game, and the striking level is just it's 2 different levels. It's like he's fighting a toddler.
How does he defend Khabib's takedown?
Al Iaquinta did.
Al's a high-level wrestler.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, you also got to think, Conor was the first double champ, right? He's got money. He's had a long time off, And so
we don't even know where his headspace is at.
No, that's what I'm saying. It's like at some point you're going to know who you're going to be fighting in the future.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if even before he fought Floyd, he was already practicing his wrestling for an up-and-coming fighter, especially since he has known Khabib for such a long time.
Yeah, they have a history for sure. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if after the day Floyd fought, he's been training nothing but takedown defense. I mean,
most of his Instagram posts have been him in wrestling
it's
with
him
jiu-jitsu.
and Dylan Dennis and so rolling around. So
I'm going to say Conor takes it, man. 3rd round knockout.
3rd round knockout.
Yep. Unless he tries to beat him in his own game and gets a submission in the 4th round.
I'm gonna break down the submission by Conor in the 4th round.
Dude, it would mind fuck you, wouldn't it?
Man, you would make so much money if you put your money down on that.
Oh, and if he did? Huh. I would just say submission in general. He would blow everybody's mind.
All right. Here's my breakdown of this whole fight. Conor gasses out. We know that. Khabib, it looks like he can gas out. Conor comes back in the 4th and 5th rounds. Khabib doesn't really come back.
Not at all. He gets worse
from that one fight. He could have Colby Covington cardio in this fight. That's a hard thing to fucking say. He could have Colby Covington cardio in this fight. We don't know. It's one fight. However, he was preparing for Tony Ferguson.
Which is a way better fighter.
It's not like he came off the couch, right?
Yeah.
So we have to assume that's Khabib at his best. And
that's sad.
Everyone says Conor's cardio is the issue. Conor comes back in that last round. The 3rd and 4th are tough for him. He comes back. The first 2 are where he shines. That 5th round, he finishes strong. The 3rd and 4th, he fades. So the 3rd, and vice versa with Khabib, he does really well in the first 3 rounds. And then even the first 2.5, Barboza even started to keep him off a little bit when they fought in that last round. Here's how I see this fight. It's like a bag of marbles, but you have 3 marbles. You got 2 green, 1 blue. Conor is the blue marble, Khabib's the green. Because Khabib keeps taking him down. And he can keep taking him down. There's so much. Khabib is so good at controlling the direction of fights that's how I see it. It's really 2 out of 3. But those are the best odds in Vegas. If you have a 1 out of 3 chance, if you have a bag with 3 marbles in it, 2 are green, 1's blue, it's so easy for you to pick that blue marble. The odds are amazing. Conor's knockout is that blue marble. It's 1 out of 3. We haven't even really seen Khabib's chin tested. We've seen a little bit in the Michael Johnson fight.
Mm-hmm.
He got stunned. He got hurt bad, but he came back and beat the shit. I mean, he's a tough guy.
Yeah.
However, and in that Chad Mendes fight, people point to the Chad Mendes fight. Chad Mendes got him down. Chad Mendes kept taking him down with ease. If Chad Mendes gets him down, Chad Mendes is a high-level wrestler. Let's not downgrade Chad Mendes. We have to think about a couple factors. That's a featherweight Conor, who is not a natural feather. He's a natural lightweight. It's a featherweight Conor. He's going to be much stronger at lightweight.
Yeah.
He's not going to be draining himself. Also, he was coming off an ACL injury. Also, Chad Mendes was unable to do anything to him on the ground besides get a couple of small elbows in. And when he got back to the feet, Conor knocked him out.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I'd say, and I almost want to switch my opinion, which is that Khabib is the one with the blue marble and Conor is the one with the 2 green, because each round starts outstanding. That's a huge advantage in Conor's favor. Conor's lateral movement, I don't see there being even the slightest competition on the feet. And I might be wrong. Khabib might duck down for a takedown, hit Conor with an overhand right, and knock him out cold. We've seen it.
Well, the same thing happened
We've seen wrestlers
Stipe.
do it to high-level strikers.
Stipe in DC was a prime example.
We've seen it with...
Dirty boxing destroyed Stipe.
We've seen it with Tyron and Darren Till.
Yep.
So we keep seeing examples of this.
But we'd be a fool to think that Conor's not thinking of that.
However, Conor McGregor is a special animal, and I'm not ready to count him out. So your prediction is what?
I see it going one of 2 ways. I think a second round knockout from Conor or a late 3rd round, early 4th round submission by Conor. Hey man, I'm telling you, man.
Okay.
You think it's crazy, but
I would love to see that. I'm not in a sarcastic way. I'd love to see.
I'm just saying, if Khabib gets fucking top mount,
so
you never know.
Yeah.
There could be an armbar flying in there.
So
just to say fuck you to the world with Conor signed his paycheck.
Khabib's a scary guy, scariest lightweight out there. Conor, probably the
best striker
in the UFC.
Probably ever seen.
Who can we talk about besides him? I think there's a couple strikers we can talk about in the UFC besides him. You can't talk about Darren Till. He got outstruck by Woodley.
Yep.
You can't talk about Overeem. You can't talk about Mark Hunt. You can't talk about a lot of the heavyweights because they get beat right by guys like DC, who are wrestlers with dirty boxing. Or they also have striking.
Yep.
You can't talk about guys like Gustafsson because he got beat by DC, even though his striking's amazing. Well, and DC outstruck him is the thing. Guys like Gustafsson. Or Oezdemir, too, who has Dutch kickboxing. The people you can talk about, I think, best strikers in the UFC, 2 of them are women. Amanda Nunes, Valentina Shevchenko.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is Stephen Wonderboy Thompson.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Another one that is in consideration, but I wouldn't consider him in the top 3, certainly, but is in consideration, has to be, is Robert Whittaker.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that guy's an animal.
Just dealing with Yoel Romero and strategic.
The way he did it, too.
His head movement, the way he rolls under spinning back fists, and the way he can... However, I'd say if there's an argument for the best, it's between Shevchenko, Wonderboy, and Conor. However, and all these people have been beaten and whatever, but those are the 3 best just strikers in the UFC. And you can argue all day long which one is better, but one of them's a double champion. One of them's knocked out Jose Aldo, who at the time was considered the pound-for-pound greatest fighter of all time. The other one has beaten Max Holloway, who beat Jose Aldo 2 times in a row. Or Conor has also done that. And then Dustin Poirier, one of the best boxers in the lightweight division. And these are young versions of them, granted. But he's the one who's accomplished those things with just his striking.
Yep.
Knocked out Chad Mendes. We've seen how good Chad Mendes is against guys like, his last fight against Miles Jury.
Yep.
Knocked him out with an overhand right. Super powerful little wrestler. My prediction is based off this. If it goes 5 rounds, I see Conor winning a decision. If it ends in the 3rd or 4th rounds, I see Khabib finishing him with a TKO or submission. With a TKO probably in the 3rd or 4th. If it ends in the first 2 rounds, it's Conor by TKO. My prediction, 2nd round TKO, Conor McGregor. I just haven't seen, and I don't even want to make a prediction on this fight. It's one of those where it's so close, so talented. It's a classic grappler versus striker. And the problem is, and I favor the strikers a lot, but the thing is the grapplers win more.
Yep.
However, I cannot deny Khabib's weaknesses and how they line up with Conor's strengths. And they say the opposite about Conor, but it's not quite true. He's dealt with a wrestler.
Well, the resume.
He's dealt with wrestlers.
That plays into it as well. The resume.
Whose resume is... Khabib has fought Michael Johnson, Edson Barboza, Dos Anjos. Those 3 I would consider in the realm of the guys Conor has beaten. Conor's beaten, as we said, Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier, Jose Aldo, Chad Mendes, blah, blah, blah. He's beaten Eddie Alvarez. Conor is one of the greatest of all time, striking. And Nate Diaz. He got beat by Nate Diaz, came back and beat him in a decision. So we've seen Conor can win decisions. And I say, I'm so close to say Conor by unanimous decision.
Well, no, and also, even if Khabib were to win, who's to say Conor couldn't come back? He did it against Nate.
It's true. It's true. And honestly, if he won we should expect a rematch. Because Conor...
Well, depending the fashion of the fight.
Depending the fashion.
If Conor comes out in 13 seconds
if Conor
and knocks
gets Ronda
him out,
Rousey'd, or Amanda Nunes, rather,
yeah.
like Ronda got, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say Conor McGregor second round TKO. And I think Khabib gets him down. And I don't think it matters.
I don't think it matters either.
I don't think Khabib does as much
I'll
as
do you
people
one
think.
better. I think Khabib hurts Conor.
I think he may cut him. Hit him with some elbows, cut him. I don't think it matters.
I would even say in the takedown hurts him.
Yeah.
But who's to say? I mean, looking at Conor's ground game, especially versus like Nate Diaz, I don't think Khabib has fought somebody who strikes more in the ground position than Conor does. So even if you take him to the ground, he's still striking you.
He's still striking. He's controlling you so that he can get back to his feet potentially. The problem with that is Khabib locks up the legs, which makes it hard to roll, and he's an expert at that. That's the thing he's an expert at.
Yeah,
if you watch Khabib hold people down, what he's doing is he's locking their legs into position, kind of like an anaconda, so that he can...
But how many elbows to the face can you take?
You can take more elbows than punches.
Like Ally Quinta, whenever Khabib had him up against the cage.
3 brain cells anyway.
Had him up against the cage. There was multiple minutes of opportunity for him to strike with elbows or punches, and I did not see him take one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's opportunities for guillotines and stuff, and he doesn't take those.
Of course.
And what are the 2 ways he takes down? He only takes down really one of 2 ways. It's either a body lock or a low single.
Yep.
So,
which we saw the low single fail.
Conor has more ways to win, and people say Khabib has more ways to win. I disagree.
No.
And I do think, despite it not getting into Khabib's head, I do think it's going to make him throw that punch a little more carelessly. And if you throw the punch carelessly, or if you even if you're in your head like, oh, he wants me to throw the punch carelessly, I'm going to be real patient with it, then it can, just that thought.
Get you knocked.
Yeah. So, Conor's super dangerous. I would not be surprised at all if Khabib beats the shit out of him or Kimuras him, but that's just my take on it. So, all right. So that's about it for this episode of the MMA-holes. We'll catch you back next week with our recap of UFC 229. Actually, I think it's happening week after next. But we'll get you back with a recap of UFC 229. And, hopefully we can get a couple of you returning listeners. All right, we've had a lot of fun. See you guys next week. Bye.